pivotal development that promises to reshape the future for many of our dedicated public servants. The topic for our discussion is the new GAE pension plan. The introduction of this new pension plan for government auxiliary employees, GAEs, marks a significant step forward in ensuring financial security and dignity for our valued workforce. This revamped pension scheme addresses long-standing issues within our old system and brings a host of improvements designed to provide better benefits and clearer processes for all GAEs. Thelma Richard, Head of the Civil Service, and Levi Bradshaw, Accountant General at the Treasury Department, will help us navigate through the intricacies of this new pension plan. They will provide an in-depth overview of the new GAE pension plan, explain the necessity of its introduction, and highlight the key differences and improvements over the old system. Our guests will also share insights on the benefits calculation, eligibility, and the steps required for claiming benefits, even in cases where beneficiaries have passed away. Additionally, they will outline the support structures in place, such as the pension query process and dedicated desks for GAEs. Stay with us as we explore these vital aspects and more, ensuring that all GAEs and their families can look forward to a secure and well-supported retirement. It's your government, your business. We shall take a short commercial break and we will be right back. Welcome back to InFocus, and we go directly into the questions. Mr. Bradshaw, can you give us an overview of the new GAE pension plan?
Thank you very much for your question.
You're
In
welcome.
responding to your question, please allow me to recognize some key stakeholders for their role in the pension reform initiative. I chose to commence at this particular point in time, recognizing that we tend to thank people at the end, and it is important that we pay tribute to persons who have made significant contribution. Indeed, institutions. And firstly, I would want to recognize the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, which would have started this process way back in 2007. Indeed, if you would have had some conversation with persons who we refer to as our traffic wardens, they would indicate to you that it actually started in 2004. And it was under the Dr. Denzil Douglas-led administration, which laid the foundation for this initiative. And tremendous work was done under the leadership of Mr. Elvis Newton, a former head of civil service, who would have been one of the key drivers. He was ably supported by Mrs. Torfrida Rochester, one of our former head CPO, chief personnel officers, and she would have indeed subsequently passed the baton of leadership onto myself. And I'm pleased now to say that the person who is currently leading this initiative is Ms. Richard, ably supported by a team from the Accountant General Department and a hard-working Pension Reform Task Force. It is important that we recognize also the work of persons who have worked and contributed to the Pension Reform Committee over the years. Public servants who would have dedicated their time and their effort to this very, very important initiative. Indeed, successive governments would have endeavored to advance the work started by the Douglas administration. And, you know, for multiplicity of reasons, they were not successful in seeing this to the end. I am truly pleased that the Dr. Terence Dew-led administration had the courage, the boldness to really bring this particular initiative to the point that we are at. He was able to announce in the 2024 budget, which was delivered in December last year, that the pension, the new contributory pension plan would be operationalized on the 1st of January 2024. That has been done. So in referring back to your question, which basically asked me to provide an overview of the plan.
Yes.
The plan is simply a plan which endeavors to provide a system support to a particular category of workers who would have worked tirelessly alongside other public servants. Unfortunately, they were not offered or eligible to receive a benefit upon the conclusion of their tenure. I'm speaking to a person who would have worked their entire life in the public service, 40 years. Upon their departure, whether voluntarily or involuntary, by retirement, resignation, or some person would have died out and in service, they were not eligible. And the government felt it was important to correct this. So as a result of that, in 2012, the 18th of May, the government would have passed legislation by way of an amendment to the Pensions Act 22.06, where this category of employees, government auxiliary employees, GAEs, and monthly paid employees who would have been employed after the 18th of May 2012 would fall under a new pension plan. So the legal framework is the amendment to the Pensions Act. Now, it's a contributory pension plan. Therefore, persons who are eligible to participate in this particular plan, which is all of our GAEs, weekly paid employees, and the monthly paid employees who would have joined the service after the 18th of May 2012, they are now required to pay from their income a contribution of 3%. Now, upon retirement from the service, they will be entitled to a pension, and I will provide more details as it relates to that.
Right.
But one other key point in terms of this particular initiative is that those persons now are eligible to retire from the public service at age 62. Those persons who found themselves on the old plan, as per law, they are required to retire from the public service at age 55. So in large measure, I think this is a good initiative. It is an initiative that should have been in place many, many years ago, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been able to serve alongside some outstanding public servants, Mr. Newton, Mr. Chester, and others, who would have championed this particular cause.
All right.
And I'm here to see to its final conclusion. I'm very grateful.
Quick follow-up question. Now, you said it's for the GAEs who are paid monthly as weekly, or they're paid weekly. So how does that come out?
Person, so, you know, a teacher who would have been employed by the government after the 12th of May 2012, they would find themselves, not a police officer, but a customs officer, a nurse, they would find themselves on that particular plan.
I was wondering specifically how this would be deducted for those who are weekly paid.
So the deduction is done weekly, you know, the Treasury working closely with the payroll department under the Office of the Prime Minister, the Human Resource Management Department. They are responsible in large measure for the processing of the salary and wages of government employees. So we would have built into our financial management system there at the Treasury a mechanism where deductions are made from the salaries and wages of eligible employees, and those funds are remitted to an account which is managed by the government.
All right. So, Ms. Richard, why was it necessary to introduce a new pension plan for GAEs?
Well, the old plan, which existed before 2012, did not cover GAEs. And I think we must point out early that this plan, while we are saying GAE pension plan, is not just a GAE pension plan. We are emphasizing GAEs at the moment because they're the first batch of persons we have dealt with and have commenced their payment of pensions. However, it encompasses all employees, after May 2012 and GAEs employed after and before 2012. So it was necessary to create a plan specific for GAEs because the plan that is currently in existence does not cover GAEs at all. There was no way in which to pay them a pension under the existing pension plan that covers civil servants.
All right. So in that case, what are the major challenges? What were the major challenges with the old pension plan?
Well, the old pension plan, other than the omission of a very critical section of the government workforce, which is the GAEs, they weren't paid a pension, and they were also not paid a gratuity under the plan. So it was necessary to look at how we can now bring some justice, basically, to this, to what they are getting, to what the GAEs are getting. How do we bring them to a similar or same level as the civil servants? We could not do that under the old plan, so we had to create a new plan that would cover them. So they weren't getting a gratuity under the old plan, they were not covered by a pension under the old plan. Those were the two major challenges. And also, the old plan, if we continue down the road that we were heading, was not sustainable to continue to add persons continuously without having some kind of income to basically sustain the fund going forward.
All right. So with that in mind, Mr. Bradshaw, what are the key differences between the old and the new?
Well, primarily the key difference between the old and the new plan is the old plan was what we refer to as a contributory pension plan. As a non-contributory pension plan, that it was what we refer to as a defined benefit plan. Mm-hmm. Whereas the new plan is a contributory plan, which is a defined contribution plan. Now, what the government has done skillfully, again, the Prime Minister must be commended, because he would have pushed the task force hard to really ensure that here it is that we have two categories of workers, persons who were recruited prior and persons who were recruited after 2012. Those who are recruited after 2012 are now required to pay a contribution. He was of the view, and the committee supported that view, that those who are persons like myself who were recruited many years ago, I'm entitled to a pension upon retirement, but I have not been required by law to contribute to my pension. Whereas those new employees, those GAE workers who never had a pension plan in the first instance, they are now required to contribute. It was his firm desire and his firm conviction that these persons should not benefit less than persons who would found themselves like me on a non-contributory plan. So therefore, what we are designing is a hybrid plan, a hybrid of a defined benefit, defined contribution, where all the pluses would accrue to the GAEs. Additionally, in terms of differences, is that, as I indicated earlier, you know, the GAEs and the new pensioners would are required now to retire at age 62. To me, that's a tremendous accomplishment. And this was in large measure brought forth by an amendment or the passage of the Government Auxiliary Employees Act. And so what that was done under the Human Resource Public Service Statutory Rules and Orders, where the rules are now set that persons who have been recruited after 2012 are now permitted to work up to age 62.
All right.
I mean, imagine a young person at 55 having been asked to retire at 55 and so forth. The government felt that was not fair, and a decision was taken to adjust that particular initiative. And so, in large measure, the differences between both plans, you know, and the benefit side, the government has insisted and the committee has recommended that the benefit that will accrue to the beneficiaries should not be different. Persons may be allowed to work longer because, you know, persons are active, and look at the last census, the mortality rates and so forth.
Yes, our lifespan is extending.
And so forth. So it's important, therefore, that the government respond.
Okay.
And I think this particular initiative is an excellent response.
All right. So then, Ms. Richard, what is required to claim benefits on behalf of a person who is entitled but has already passed away? So these would be the beneficiaries of such a person.
Yes, so if your family member would have passed away after 2012 and they would have fit the parameters of entitlement to a pension, that is a minimum of 15 years. So to be eligible, you have to have worked 15 continuous years with the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, and you have to have been 62 years to receive an immediate pension. If you have 15 and it's somewhere down the line, it's then. But for persons who have a loved one who's passed away and you are the beneficiary, or there's an estate that benefits from this, then they will have to submit a letter of administration to the government. So this letter of administration is basically proof that you are the person who is legally authorized to collect on behalf of the deceased. And that is presented to the government's treasury along with your ID, and they will process the payments after that. So that's what we encourage persons to do. They are welcome now to start making that inquiry and submit their letters of administration to the government treasury.
Thelma, you could add that many of our former or even deceased pensioners or employees, GAEs, would have took this step to ensure that the way their estate is managed, and they would have given strict instructions to the HR department and the treasury how their funds can be dispersed.
Yes.
So we have on record, and you can speak more on that.
Yes.
That
We have
on record.
Some persons, I'm hoping most, would have completed what we call a beneficiary form.
Okay.
So if that is on file, that is who we will be paying the benefits to.
Use the cost.
If it's not on file, then they will have to bring to us a letter of administration. So I want to encourage all the GAEs out there, and actually all government workers, to submit a beneficiary form. This will be kept on file. It will indicate to us who your beneficiary is if in case of the your untimely death. So please complete a beneficiary form. It will help cut the cost down to your estate if that happens.
All right. That sounds very good. Now, Mr. Bradshaw, how does the new plan ensure the smooth processing of such claims? I would assume there would be some legal aspect that would come into play.
Well, you know, we are strictly guided by the legal framework that manage our oversight. But, you know, upon retirement at age 62, having contributed your time, we would follow the basic process, that the rules are very clear as to the formula that are used for computing your benefits. We will proceed to undertake that computation to ensure that what we would do at the Treasury in terms of computing your benefits, we would have to send that file to the Office of the Director of Audit for verification. So if we are human, if a mistake is made, it is our responsibility to ensure that the officers or the former employees are treated fairly. And we would basically complete that particular process to ensure that what is due to you is paid to you. Nothing more, but nothing less.
All right. So, Ms. Richard, Mr. Bradshaw mentioned that perchance, if an error is made, can you describe the pension query process for the GAEs?
The process that Mr. Bradshaw just explained is for persons who are receiving their pension calculations.
Okay.
That's actually different.
It's
if
different.
you feel that your pension calculations is incorrect, you will go to the Treasury, make a query. However, the query process that we're referring to is for persons who think they should have gotten a pension but did not receive maybe an invitation to the ceremony that we held last Thursday, or would not have been contacted to say that you are due a pension and we will be processing one for you. For those persons, we have created a pension query desk in the Prime Minister's office that they can access. So through the month of August, that's till August 31st, they can actually visit and speak with someone. But what I encourage people to do is fill the form first. The forms are available at Human Resources at Government Headquarters, and they are also available at the Treasury Department. Complete the query forms. The query forms basically ask you to tell us who you are, when did you work for government, and some other details, so that we can verify. We verify by the records we have, and we verify by the records at Social Security to ensure that all the information is correct and that we're not shorting anyone of a pension. And once that is verified by HR, it's sent up to the query desk. That person will give you a direct call and have the conversation with you about your eligibility for a pension.
Lovely. Very informative, very interesting, but we must take a short break. And so we'll be right back with more In Focus.
Captain Shop for 24 years. And to this day, I am proud receiving Social Security. That's a pension. And this next one now is the next pension. That is wonderful.
Very good, because this was something that I advocated for all through the years. I've always feel like we are government workers and we are working just as hard as those who are civil servants, right? And I always feel that we were entitled to it. And I thank God that I live to see that day that I could have enjoyed my Social Security and now I can enjoy my pension.
Welcome back to InFocus, and we continue our discussion with Mr. Bradshaw. How does the new plan affect GAEs who are still in the system and contributing their 3%?
Okay, so thank you again. The GAEs who are still in the system, who are currently contributing, they will be contributing their 3% up to the point of their separation from the state, either by voluntary retirement, resignation, or whether they reach the age of retirement. So now, those individuals, upon attaining that particular age of retirement, will be eligible, not for the sum of their 3% contribution, because the 3% contribution, when you accumulate that amount, it will be less than what their pension benefits would be.
Much less.
Much less. But again, you know, the government would have made that decision that you are contributing to your pension. And because you're contributing, and there are those who are not contributing, then you should benefit similarly to those who are contributing. So the new plan, those persons, when they attain the age, those GAEs, they would now find themselves eligible for a pension. This is historic, because traditionally, when a GAE would have left the public service, they would have earned maybe a long service gratuity. Previously, it was a compassionate gratuity, and that's it. Now they will earn a gratuity which is substantially more than a long service gratuity, substantially more than what we refer to as a compassionate gratuity. And in addition, they will now be eligible for a pension, which will be paid to them for the rest of their life.
Lovely.
Let me follow up with what Mr. Bradshaw was talking about with regard to the gratuity. So one of the things and the gripes of GAEs and other civil servants post-2012 is that their gratuity is different from civil servants prior to that time. But the cabinet and the task force has ensured that going forward there is equity. And we have tried to bring about a gratuity that's basically the same as to what would have been received by, so basically all employees will be paid a gratuity using the same formula that has been used for forever, basically. Okay. So we've brought some equity to the situation and minimized that separation between who a GAE is and who a civil servant is. And I think that was very important to GAE employees.
All right. So I think a critical question that can be asked, Mr. Bradshaw, is who is eligible to retire at 62 under this new plan?
Under this new plan, the persons who are eligible to retire would be all GAEs who have been employed by the state even before 2012, and those upon attaining that age they are eligible to retire. But in addition to GAEs, the traditional monthly paid employees of the government, teachers who were recruited after, the nurses, and other public servants who have been recruited to the public sector after May 18, 2012, are now eligible to work on to age 62, not retire at 55. We endeavored to bring the age 62 forward to tie it with the current retirement age for Social Security. But that is another conversation.
Well, actually, we would like to have that conversation here.
Yes, well, what we've in fact done is eliminated it for now, and as the other conversation continues, you will see that it would be greatly minimized, because that 7 years is a huge gap for a lot of people.
All right. So are you saying then that it will provide benefits separate from the Social Security pension.
Yes, and we must make that point because I think we've been hearing a lot of chatter that it's replacing Social Security, and that's not what we're doing. We're actually giving you an additional pension. So persons who are already receiving their Social Security pensions will now receive an additional pension payment monthly for the rest of their lives from the government of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Lovely. So what measures have been taken to ensure GAEs understand the changes in the new plan? Is there some sort of information session, some sort of awareness that is being created?
Indeed. We would have started some informational sessions with our GAEs, to basically inform them as to the changes that were coming and as to what their benefits are under the new scheme. And those information sessions will be continued. Indeed, they would be led by the Office of the Head of the Civil Service. So maybe Thelma would be able to say a bit more.
Yes, do delve a bit more into that first.
Well, we've already began the sessions, but we do need to continue. You and InFocus are all part of the communication plan. We do have to go out and speak to our existing GAEs and post-2012 employees so that they can be clear on what currently is being provided for them. And I know there are lots of questions, so we will be available. We will be sending out a schedule to the ministries for all the GAEs and post-2012 employees. So please, when you get that invitation from your permanent secretaries, please ensure that you are available, that you're present to hear good news, and you get to ask questions for yourself and clear up any issues that you may have.
Is there also maybe a Facebook page or website where some of this
Not
information
yet, but
is
thank you for
posted?
that advice. That's something we can definitely work on.
All right. So how does the new plan impact the financial stability of the pension fund, Mr. Bradshaw?
Well, fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, I would have had the opportunity to sit near the center, at the center of government, public financial management for the past 25 years. And I've been able to learn at the feet of some of our stalwart public financial managers. Indeed, my own work would have allowed me to function as the head and chair of the Public Finance Committee. And if there was a decision that can be considered an excellent decision, it is the decision to really proceed with establishing this particular initiative and paying our GAEs what many feel strongly is due to them. The financial implications would be, something that we would continue to monitor, because the sustainability of any particular plan as it affects the finances of the state is something that is key and must be monitored. But again, the state has the opportunity to look for opportunities where we can reduce instances of waste, because payment of a pension to this category of employees is the correct thing. I can recall in a meeting, I think it was last week when the Prime Minister would have made the presentation there at the commencement ceremony, he would have indicated that it was not a difficult decision, And, I thought about, it was not a difficult decision, but it took so long to happen. And what I concluded is that because maybe of the representation of the task force in pushing home the advantages and the importance of such an initiative, I concluded that if it was a difficult decision, I concluded that it was the right decision. It was the correct decision. And having made the correct decision, it is important, therefore, for all of us as public financial managers to ensure that we execute our duties diligently, to ensure that the resources that are there to be collected are collected, and we manage the resources under our watch with a high degree of prudence to ensure that the state continues to meet this obligation, which is an important obligation to an important category of workers who would have given their life working alongside persons who were eligible, but they were not. That has been corrected. So as we think of the financial stability, I think the fact that there's a fund that has been established where the 3% that is deducted from the salaries and earnings and wages from these category of workers would go towards that. In the cases of myself and others who would have served prior, there was no fund specifically established to pay my pension. It was paid directly from the consolidated fund. So management of government resources will be key, so that we can use the resources that is provided by way of tax revenue and others, along with resources provided by the deduction to meet these very important obligations. I feel that there is strong commitment from every level of government to continue to fulfill these obligations. It is the correct thing to do.
Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty then. What determines an employee, or what set of criteria is there for a GAE versus a civil servant per se? What's the difference, or is there no difference?
That's what we're working to do. We're working to minimize those differences and any perceived differences, because there are some that are perceived that don't exist. And I think we have done a good job of narrowing down those differences, moving ahead, especially with this pension plan. We're still working on our regulations to ensure that our GAEs and civil servants are treated the same, that they too are heard and seen and have due diligence in any processes that they have to face in the civil service.
Okay, so I complete high school and I have a certain level of qualifications. I apply to government. What determines whether I am employed as a worker of GAE versus a worker of any other government area?
Okay, so government has two categories of workers currently. We have GAEs, which are normally referred to as weekly paid persons, wage employees, but we do have some monthly, and we have civil servants, which are persons appointed to the government service. Going forward, we're going to change some of that in terms of what pertains to GAEs as well. But the difference between the two, or what determines your hiring as a civil servant versus a GAE, one, the type of job may determine whether or not it's a GAE. Not all positions are considered civil servant positions. So our GAEs are our sanitation workers, that's our drain cleaners, our cooks at the hospital, our maids at the hospital, cleaners in offices. Majority of these are not on the government's listed as civil servants. So they're considered the essential workers, but they are considered weekly paid GAEs.
Definitely essential workers, because that point would have come out particularly during COVID. For example, office workers would have to work from home, but GAEs more often would be allowed to come outside and do their work, including farmers and so forth, along with farmers. So this is something that is very promising. So then, both of you, can you please let us know what feedback would you have received from GAEs about the new pension plan? I noted there were some of them that were featured following, showing, giving their comments and their responses during the ceremony.
After the ceremony.
Okay, there you go.
Lots of hugs. So yes, they are thankful. I think surface, they're thankful for the money, of course. But I think there's a deeper meaning to getting this pension. I think you would have touched on that a few minutes ago. For them, it's a recognition that they too would have contributed to nation building, that they are seen and that they are valued, and that their work did not go unnoticed. So I think that is not just about the money, but that they are recognized as nation builders and valued as workers for the civil service, because they too would have worked for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Mr. Bradshaw?
Just yesterday, I was walking towards Thelma's office for a meeting, and I ran into a lady I'm familiar with. You know, she was one of those persons responsible for providing security and like across traffic warden at a primary school that one of my sons attended. And so I know the face, you know, she's a bit older, like I am a bit older. But she picked me out and she stopped me and said, you know, Mr. Bradshaw, I'm so happy, I'm so proud that finally the government was able to reward us for our contribution, you know. And she went along to thank God, you know. many blessings on you, many blessings on the team and so forth. And these are things that really, this is what I'm doing this for. You know, I've been around this service for, you know, in a few years, I'll be 40 years here if I'm still around. And, you know, one of the things that kept me at this job was this initiative. You know, I felt that, you know, I've worked alongside a number of persons, those ladies at the government print tree, especially during my years at budget, you know. When everybody is home sleeping, they're there trying to get the budget documents completed for Parliament. You know, and many died waiting for a pension and so forth. So this is something that is dear to my heart. You know, I'm the product of a former sugar worker, which is something that can be claimed by the majority of us, you know, in this country. But my mother was worked over 40 years in the industry. Upon retirement, never got a pension. You know, her pension was me and my brothers and so forth. But you know, we are training and developing a citizenry where persons can be independent and ought to be independent. No one should have to depend on a child for their sustenance and their care. Persons must be allowed to retire with dignity. And if persons are paid according to the service that they would have provided to the development of our country, and they are rewarded for their contribution to this nation, then paying them a pension, having worked for 30, 40, some maybe close to 50 years, I think it's the right and the correct and decent thing to do. So, you know, if I can highlight any activity that I've been associated with, and it's numerous in my years of public service, I think this is the crowning moment. You know, I always say to my friends, you know, I can leave now because this is something that I've dedicated a lot of my own efforts and energy towards.
You recite that very often.
And so forth.
So that was one of your goals.
I am very happy that finally this initiative has come to fruition, and we have been able to make so many of our fellow citizens be respected and benefit from their hard work. This is not a handout. Although there are social programs and there are social benefits, we talk about social safety nets. This is something that you earned because of your efforts. And persons now must be allowed to retire with respect and with dignity. And all who would have contributed, I really want to commend them.
And in a sense, it is something they're investing in because their 3% is coming out from their salary towards this. So then, what are the next steps in the implementation of this pension scheme? You may have mentioned one already in terms of the education and the awareness aspect of it.
Yes.
What else is next?
And you mentioned investment, so that is our next logical step. So yes, I think we need to start thinking and moving in the vein of investment. And that's one of the things we will endeavor as our next step, is to provide sessions so people can learn about financial planning and retirement planning. So investment is key in that, and they should look at their contribution as an investment. So the Chief Personal Officer, the Accountant General's Department, and my office will be planning sessions. Moving along with the different ministries, we'll communicate via the PSs to share the information to each person who is going to be covered by the new plan, and invite them to sessions so we can have that conversation on what is in store for them and how they can manage what their monies will be, let's say if they're going to retire, because persons get a lump sum with the gratuity, and you know, we hear sad stories of how that money disappears in such a short time. So we want to give them better tools on how to manage the monies that they will be receiving upon retirement.
And if I can weigh in, you know.
Yes, certainly.
I mean, indeed, you know, retirement should be a journey. Your preparation for retirement should start when you start to work. Your productive years, if you would have attended school and left school at age 18, you know, between 18 and 62, it's 40 or 44 years. Mm-hmm. You should start planning for your retirement at age 18 when you join the workforce, not at the end. And part of the exercises that we intend to undertake is to start to educate our employees about retirement planning. Savings, you must save. You know, if you don't save, then you know you are preparing yourself for hardship. you know, this dependence on social programs, you know, this is something new to me, you know, growing up, you know, in a agriculture household where you had to depend on yourself, you know. There was no self, there was no pap, you know, even when, you know, certain programs came and we were not eligible to access them. Self-reliance. We have to build self-reliance among our citizenry and encourage our people to save during your days when you're strong, prepare for your future, and so forth. So, you know, I would really want to support and commend Ms. Richard for her efforts and her leadership and her desire to ensure that the public service should not be a place where people go to work. You spend a lot of your most productive years contributing to the development of this country. I think part of that development, part of the education must be financial planning, retirement planning, and ensuring that persons develop an attitude of savings for that rainy day that will come.
And we want to start the conversation in government, but I hope that the conversation doesn't stay there. I hope that it would spur a national conversation on financial planning and management and on investment and savings. Okay, so that is really our hope.
All right. So I like that. I also would touch on what Mr. Bradshaw mentioned in terms of St. Kitts and Nevis was predominantly an agriculture-based society, and so you would sometimes find, as you mentioned, that persons in my grandmother's time would say the reason they got so many children was because they wanted to make sure that there was somebody there to look after them when they got older. And so this, in a sense, is giving such persons, parents in our society, the opportunity to be more independent. And this is something that we would indeed encourage. So just to touch on the whole part of the financial aspect of it, you mentioned, Ms. Phillip, that there is going to be... Ms. Richards. Richard, you mentioned that there is going to be an opportunity to learn get financial training in order to invest and save their money. What would be the beginning process of something like that?
For a person to save their monies or the financial management?
How they would be able to invest financially.
Start the conversation. So we're going to invite them to sessions where they can hear from persons in the field, in banking, in investment, on the different products out there that they can invest in, or how they can go about improving their savings plan, making budgets, that sort of thing. That's the conversation we want to start with our, not just our GAEs, but all government employees.
All right.
No.
So what are the next steps that we can look forward to? And maybe you can, at this point, let me know, what is the thing you would like to stick in our viewers and listeners, I guess, opinions or in their brain, literally? What would be the key thing that you would like to stay with them about this whole new pension plan?
I think your InFocus has a theme. Remind me of what that is.
The theme...
Your government.
Your government, your business.
Your business.
Yes.
And that's basically what we're about. It's our government, and we need to make sure that it is everybody's business what happens in government. And as government prospers, everyone should also prosper. And that's basically what I want to leave with the people. As for the next steps, we would have commenced the pension ceremony last week. So we would have started paying pensions to everyone who was already 62. Mr. Bradshaw and his team is already working on a list of persons who will be eligible in the coming months. Because there are going to be persons, as they turn 62, they will be pension eligible. So those persons will start receiving their pensions soon after they make the age of 62. We will also be working on persons who are deceased. We have, unfortunately, a number of persons who have been deceased since 2012 who are eligible for a pension. Now, we cannot pay a pension to their survivors, but we will be paying a benefit to those persons. And we will be contacting them over the next few weeks during the month of August to let them know what we need for them to bring in to claim that benefit. And then we will move on to our existing GAEs who are contributing so they can know what benefits are there for them. I have a few people already reaching out and asking me what it is because they are ready to retire. I have GAEs who have been holding on, for this plan. So I'm happy that we were able to deliver for them.
Mr. Bradshaw?
Well, one's dignity is key. One's independence is key. And out of this exercise, I think what we were able to accomplish was an opportunity to restore a sense of dignity to a category of workers who would have done the hard work, the work that many of us don't want to do for ourselves, but the essential work. And I think the decision to operationalize this particular initiative was a good one. And I would just hope that persons who are beneficiaries and persons who will be future beneficiaries would look back and this particular moment and be satisfied that, finally somebody remembered us.
Yes.
And so that is really, having been at this fight for a while, finally somebody remember that these people are human beings, are people. They are our brothers, they are our sisters, they are our parents, and our children who would have found themselves working as GAE now would be able to earn a benefit that they would have contributed to upon their separation from the employment, either by way of retirement or resignation.
All right.
So,
thank you. We'll be right back after this short break with more In Focus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
They have them.
They have the testimonials?
They have some.
Okay, we're right back with In Focus, and we'll just basically do a little more delving into some of the aspects that we would have addressed, such as in terms of the eligibility. Now, let me give several scenarios. For instance, I am a GAE employee. I would have worked for most of my life in terms of maybe assisting with cleaning specific area. Would have been close to my community where I live, within my community, and then I would have heard about this pension scheme. Remind me again, where should I go? What should I bring any document with me to show that I have worked for a certain amount of time and in order to be eligible for benefits?
Yes, so you would visit either the Accountant General's unit or the Human Resources Management Department, which is housed at government headquarters. You should bring with you a valid government ID. Okay, preferably a Social Security card, because it does have your Social Security number on there, which we will be using to verify your dates of employment. So where we lack data, our Social Security is very, very good in terms of having that data ready, and they're always willing to share with us, your information in terms of verifying your dates. No details, guys. So we will contact Social Security once you would have completed the form. You would have tell us who you are, your Social Security number, where do you live, where did you work. Some people have worked multiple places, so they will list all the places they worked and the dates in which they would have worked.
You can recall,
Yes, and we will check our system, because we can check the ITMS system that's at the Treasury, and then we will verify if it's something different from the form, we will call Social Security, we will ask them what are these dates, and we will match them up and verify. I'm going to give you an example, a real example that we had today. And the person would have started in government 2009, prior to 2009 actually. But it appears on our system that they would have left and came back and worked some other places. But once we would have contacted Social Security said the entire payment period, even though they worked 3 different places, the entire payment has been from government. So we would have had some government agencies that a person might have been sent to work. For example, Solid Waste would have been one of those, Mr. Bradshaw. Solid Waste was initially a government entity. And when Solid Waste would have left, before Solid Waste, they were within government as a whole.
And public health.
And they went to be a statutory body, but they were not immediately severed. So someone like that may have a claim, because we'll have to look at their entire records via Social Security to see where they were paid for. So we were able to verify today that that person does indeed have continuous work and is due a pension. So we now need to send that data over to Mr. Bradshaw and his team, and they will prepare the check and the pension payments going forward.
And I just want to add that we place high value on the memory of our former employees. You know, the reality is, and the truth is, that those of us who are what we call civil servants, there's a file for us, a personal file. In the case of GAE, that file would have been a file managed from their department. So if you worked at Water Department or Public Works, they are the ones who manage your records. And we have seen over the period of time that multiplicity of government departments have been moving from one place to the next. And one of the things I've recognized is that enough attention has not been paid to the management of the records. So you move, you go into a new building, so all of a sudden this box of files shouldn't come by me. And you leave that file with the important state and historic information of our workers and so forth. So the need for a national archive where all these things, there can be a national repository is key.
Yes.
But we rely heavily on your memory. So if you felt that, you know, I have not heard my name, but I worked for 15 years, come in, complete the query form. Thelma would have indicated that we have an excellent Social Security where the records are solid, because our governments and multiple successive administrations since 1978, the government have not failed to pay Social Security. That's not a boast that can be made in other jurisdictions. Government pay your Social Security in to the fund. Therefore, there's a record at Social Security to say that Mr. X, John Doe, would have worked, so they can verify your information.
All right. So speaking of verification, another scenario. I am the daughter of a former GAE who has now passed. They have died. And I am so happy to hear about all of this talk about the new pension plan, because it means there is a chance that I also may be eligible for some money from the time period that my parent would have worked. Is that process any different? What's the procedure in terms of checking to see if I can claim?
Right. That's the second phase, as I would have mentioned before. And Mr. Bradshaw and his team has a list of persons who would have been deceased since 2012 and are eligible. So you are the daughter, you will come in, inquire whether or not we have the beneficiary form. If that was completed, we will contact you. If your number is not current, we will figure out how to contact you. That's how we have to do it. Think it is a small place.
That's true.
So we have been reaching out to persons in the communities. If I don't know that person personally, somebody does. Okay, and that's how we were able to track down even some of the GAEs who were at the session last week. So we will reach out to you. If you don't hear from us, please feel free to reach out to us, either the Treasury Department or the Human Resource Management Department. If you have a letter of if you're deceased, you would have, what would you have? The letter of administration? But we will first check the beneficiary form. But if you have that, because some people would have had that previously because they would have dealt with the estate
other estate of
their
their
family members.
right.
And we encourage you to come in and share that with us, a copy of that with us, and we will process payments as we go ahead for the next phase. Mr. Bradshaw touched on records management for GAEs.
Yes.
Previously that was decentralized, but as we make these changes to the pension plan and the acts, we have to centralize GAE record keeping. So the Human Resource Management Department will be responsible for collecting and housing all GAE information going forward. So retrieval of data would be much easier in the future.
All right, sounds good. So was there any feedback, whether in the testimonials at the ceremony or otherwise, as you have been mentioning, that persons have seen you walking by and they have mentioned it? Was there any feedback in terms of the change in age, extending the pensionable age?
Well, for those GAEs, it's not new. It's always been 62
It's
for
always
GAEs.
been 62.
Who it changed for were civil servants employed after 2012. So for we have been, when they get their letters of employment, all that information is there. So there has been no negative feedback as to the change. As a matter of fact, it's a welcome feedback. And we have people who have been in the civil service prior to 2012 who has been asking for that. But we're not there yet. So for now, it is post-2012 and GAEs. There has been no negative feedback because we have minimized, actually removed that 7 years gap for Social Security and government's pension.
All right. So now we can look into your final remarks. Is there anything that you would like to say? Maybe give some advice to GAEs in terms of going forward, in terms of what they can expect.
I'm going to reiterate for persons who are making their queries now that the minimum years of service is 15. So that's the first step to knowing whether or not you qualify for a pension going forward. 15 years unbroken service, and 62 before pension is paid. So if you have 19 years and you're not yet 62 and you're going to be 62 in December, your pension payments will begin in December. I also want to share that for persons receiving a pension already, or who will be receiving a pension, that like all pensioners for government, you will be required to complete a life certificate. So that's twice per year. I think that is twice per year. This is just so we know that you are alive. We don't go out and check everyone physically, but you have to bring something in, certify that you are still alive, and the pensions will continue to be paid to you for the rest of your life.
And if I can follow in on the life certificate, you do not need to pay anybody to certify your life certificate. You can easily come into the Treasury and any of our staff will certify that for you. So it's not a cost to you. If you can go to your pastor or to a senior public officer, JP, but you should not pay. It can be done. And there are sometimes when some of our older pensioners, I know them, they call, I know their voice. I haven't heard any announcement, and I will accept that. But one of the things I want to close with is to encourage our new pensioners, those who would have received checks last week at the ceremony and those who are still to collect their checks at the Treasury, that we will want to update your records at the Treasury, your banking information. We are encouraging you to complete a form with your correct banking information because it's our intent to pay you by way of direct deposit into your bank account. You don't need to leave your home. You don't need to leave to come to the Treasury to pick up a check. We are moving towards cashless, and we are encouraging our persons to receive payment by way of direct deposit via EFT into whichever bank account, whichever credit union you're affiliated with, and so forth. So that is one of the things I want to hammer home and encourage, that many of you would have worked with the public service many years ago, and we might be able to find some bank account on record. But because you would have left service many years ago, in some instances, we are not sure if that account is still active, if it's dormant. So we are asking you now to reach out to us, complete the necessary forms, and advise us that this is my active operational bank account, so we can deposit a lot of your pension directly.
So, Ms. Richard, can I assume then also this would apply in terms of updating your phone numbers for those persons who
all your
would
personal
have
data, if you have moved from
Address as well.
Connery to Sandy Point, please let us know. because at some point we may need to contact you. So phone numbers and addresses.
And if I may add, name changes.
Yes.
Because yesterday we issued a check to an individual who would have just recently changed her name by way of deed poll. So, you know, and you might have difficulty getting that check processed at the bank, because your name there is no longer Levi Bradshaw, it's Levi Richard. So, you know, we would want to be informed and provided with the necessary documentation so we can make the necessary changes and to reduce any disruption and any embarrassment to you when you present yourself to the financial institution. You ought not to be disrespected. You have done your national service, you have paid your price for this country, and you should be accorded every respect.
That is a lovely way to end this edition of InFocus. And so we thank you, Mr. Richard and Mr. Bradshaw, very much for providing this critical information pertaining to our GAE pension plan. And so, audience, those of you viewing, those of you within the sound of my voice, we thank you very much for being with us for InFocus, where it is your government, your business.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.